Hello everyone, and welcome to our explanation of the 3.5 paragraph essay. If these sound familiar, if you did them in high school, yes, this is the same thing you probably did in high school. I know that these are something that you may have seen before, and I always begin this conversation by saying, yeah, they're boring, but they work. And I'll tell you why I really value the 3.5 paragraph essay. I do want to back up briefly and talk about what a 3.5 paragraph essay is, because in my own experience as a teacher, I have learned that while many of you do create 3.5 paragraph essays, not everyone has heard of them, or someone might have been taught that they were called something else. Just to justify what I do a little bit to those of you who are familiar, I've taught students for 20 years now in writing, and I've noticed a stark difference between students who learn this technique and the students who don't. And kids who never learn this technique are forever handicapped. I promise you that it really does work. I used the same technique as I got into graduate school that I learned in high school with this technique. It really can be applied to an essay of any length. We're going to learn to write in this format now for a short 5-paragraph essay, and I'm going to teach you how this technique will turn into a paper of any length by showing you how to turn it into a 6 or 7-page paper for your research paper later in the semester. Okay, so backing up, let's define 3.5. The 3 refers to the number of points in the thesis statement. We'll talk about what a thesis statement means to me as well. That just means the main idea of the paper, but we'll elaborate later. And the 5 refers to the total number of paragraphs. So if you're asked to write a 3.5 paragraph essay, it means the whole thing will be 5 paragraphs long and it will make 3 major points. Okay, so I'm hoping that you have already read the Jessi Draft 2 essay that is located in Blackboard under 3.5 paragraph essays. If you haven't read that essay yet, the draft 2 of Jessi, please stop this presentation and go and read the Jessi essay very carefully before you continue. I'm creating this presentation under the assumption that you are familiar with the essay already. Okay, you want to have it in front of you while you watch the rest of these slides and we talk about it. I would suggest that you print it if you can, so that you can mark on it and take notes. You'll see here pictured at the bottom of the slide 3 young ladies in costume. Well, they dress like that almost every day. Actually, these are 3 of my friends. In the middle is Jessi, the subject of our essay, my oldest and dearest friend. Okay, backing up further. So if we're going to talk about definitions, one of the most important definitions I can give you for writing is of the word essay. So if we back up and look at the origins of the word, this is always fun, the etymology behind words, the origins, the history of a word. It comes from a Latin root, which means to try. Anyone who takes French, essayer is the verb that means to try. So thinking about that definition, an essay is simply a try, an attempt to prove to the reader that the thesis, which I call the main or controlling idea, is reasonable. Essays are by definition persuasive. They're not book reports, they're not summaries, they are persuasive writing pieces. You're trying to convince your reader that you have a valid point to make. They aren't necessarily easy. Sometimes teachers, especially in other subject areas, use that term essay very loosely. They don't mean that it's a persuasive piece. They toss it around for any kind of writing that's longer than a couple of sentences. But to be honest, the true definition of the word essay should include the idea of persuasion. I wanted to begin your introduction with a 3.5 essay with a descriptive essay because it sounds much more like a story that you're used to reading. The descriptive essay uses details of the subject, for this case Jessi, to help prove the point, to help make sure that the thesis statement seems reasonable. It also includes, besides those descriptive details, the 5 senses, what you can see, smell, taste, touch, and hear about the subject. It also includes anecdotes. That's just a word that means the little stories you tell along the way. You do this all the time. You tell anecdotes to your friends. Oh my gosh, you'll never believe what happened to me at Thornton's before I got to class. You'll never believe what he said at the party. Those are anecdotes, those little stories. In the Jessi essay, The main anecdote is about the baby shower, and then there are shorter little anecdotes that describe Jessi's other activities, like knitting for those in need. All of those help to support the main idea about Jessi. So a descriptive essay uses lots of good descriptive details and little stories or anecdotes to convince the reader that the writer's main idea, the thesis, is reasonable. Okay. In the Jessi 2 draft essay, I give lots of details about the decorations. I tell you a lot about the outfits of the other guests to set up a big contrast for when Jessi walks in, because it is such a stark difference. Okay, this is the real Jessi. She is quirky, she is funny, she is her own person through and through. I love her dearly. Okay, so please be kind, and that's the whole point of my essay. I want you to look at Jessi with new eyes. Don't let your first impressions fool you. Okay, when you first write an essay like this, you want to get your ideas on paper without worrying about the formatting. I don't want you to try to squeeze it into the 3.5 structure just yet. The prompt for this essay was to describe a person who is more than first meets the eye, how false impressions can be wrong, our first impressions can be wrong. So I just started writing about Jessi, and it came to mind that that situation with the baby shower would be a great place to show all the contrasts between some of the people in my life and Jessi. You want to write without worrying. So your 3.5 paragraph essay is going to be about the movies that we've seen and what you've learned from the films. I would start off by choosing which film you have the most to say about, and then getting your ideas on paper without worrying about the format at all. You can always go back and make it clean and organized later. After you have your ideas down, then it is time to try to squeeze it into the format. Now, I know this 3.5 paragraph essay format can feel very artificial. It is more of an exercise than real writing. But to me, this is a lot about like learning to color in the lines. Once you can show me that you can color in the lines beautifully, you can draw a piece like Salvador Dali with clocks melting all over the road, or Picasso with women with 6 eyes. Show me that you can do it my way first, and then I'll let you ease up on the way that you decide to organize your essays later. The first thing we do to create that structure is to come up with 3 strong ideas that help control everything about your essay. They become the basis for your thesis statement. What do I mean when I say thesis statement? You've probably been taught in the past this is the main idea of the paper. Let's break that down into something more complex and more for the college level. Thesis statements by definition always express an opinion, never a statement of fact. So a main idea of a piece of factual writing might be that when Pearl Harbor happened. A thesis statement might be why Pearl Harbor happened, because we don't have one right answer. There are lots of opinions on that. So a thesis statement should be opinionated. It has to provide some preview of the points to come in the order they'll present it in the essay. I'll show you what that means in just a moment, but those 3 points have to be in order. And your thesis needs to be complicated enough, sophisticated enough, not complicated, sophisticated enough, so that it leads to a conclusion that is not just a restatement of earlier ideas. I know that you have been taught in the past that your last paragraph should reiterate your main points. No, that isn't what we're going to do in English 101. That is the 10th grade version of the conclusion paragraph. I'm going to bring you into college for that. Okay, so thinking back to the Jessi essay, draft 2, here was my thesis statement. I admire Jessi's unique and confident style. She spends less time, money, and energy worrying about what others think than I do, and her life is richer for it. Okay, we're going to break that down just a little bit. First of all, is it opinionated? Yes, and I'll talk about that again. The 3 points in that essay are that she spends, number 1, less time, number 2, less money, and 3, less energy worrying. The film essay, the thesis must also be an opinion, not a statement of observable fact. For example, here's what we want to think about. Somebody might say Marty McFly from Back to the Future was talented, smart, and handsome. Now, is that an opinion? Yes, because someone else could argue that he isn't these things. That means it's debatable. They could say he's not at all. This is not a good thesis statement. Marty was a sophomore, an Eagle Scout, and a member of the football team. He either is or isn't these things. We can find out for sure. It's not up to debate. It's not a statement of opinion. It's a statement of fact, or it's false. The thesis that in my Jessi essay is definitely debatable. Okay, I admire her unique and confident style. She spends less time, money, and energy worrying about what others think than I do, and her life is richer for it. In contrast, if you talk to my mom about Jessi, my mom loves Jessi dearly, like another daughter. She's known Jessi as long as I have, since we were 4 years old. But my mother says that Jessi's weird style hurts her chances of getting and keeping a good job or attracting a sane life partner. And she kind of has a point. Jessi sometimes looks and behaves like someone you would not sit next to on a bus. But I know she's a good person. So how do you know if your thesis is debatable? There's a way to test it. If your thesis can be reformed into its opposite, or what we call an antithesis, it's debatable. So if someone says Marty is kind, funny, and smart, you can test it by trying to turn it into the opposite. Marty is cruel, crude, and stupid. Now this is not a good thesis statement for your research paper. That's very, very basic and crude, but that's the test. It works. So those 3 points that you come up with, there's a strategy for presentation. You want to rank them from the strongest to the weakest. And I would suggest that you put them in this order. A lot of people want to start with their strongest point because they think first impressions are really important. But I want you to ask yourself, when does the teacher put the grade on the paper? I grade it at the end. So if you have your first point is strong, start off strong. Bury your weakest point in the middle, and then end with your strongest point. My last impression will be best, okay? From the Jessi essay, I started with time because we all want to save this and it's a noble goal. Time gives you the opportunity to do lots of other good things. Money is good. We all want to save money, but that's very worldly. It's not as noble as saving time. I felt like it was my weakest point, although I thought it was still a good one. And then the energy that she saves, we can't do anything without energy. If we're too tired to help, we can't. If we're too tired to enjoy life, we can't. I thought this was the strongest argument for how well Jessi does with her life. Okay, so the other trick about these 3 points is that they have to be distinct from one another. Okay, you can't say that someone is smart and clever. Those are synonyms, as are compassionate and caring. Your 2 paragraphs will just be a repetition. Even if you come up with new points to make, they really aren't different from one another. Friendly and outgoing are also 2 statements that seem very close and hard to defend individually. The grammar of the thesis statement. Your thesis statement should be a sentence that uses parallel structure. Parallel is like the train tracks you see here. It's all in line with one another. They are the same. They're the same distance apart. When we talk about parallel structure, we're talking about using the same parts of speech. So here's what the parallel structure looks like in Jessi. I use a subject-verb pair. I use the main subject-verb pair, she spends, subject she, verb spends, to apply to 3 different nouns. She spends less time, less money, and less energy. She spends less time. She spends less money. She spends less energy. Okay, so it's always subject, verb, noun. Subject, verb, noun. Okay, look at this example. This one is not okay. She was smart, a good dancer, and drove her little brother to work every day, even though he wasn't a good kid. The sentence makes sense, but it doesn't flow well. It needs parallel structure. Okay, if you look at this, she was smart. Smart is an adjective. A good dancer, noun, and drove, verb, her brother to work every day, even though he wasn't a good kid. It's all over the place. Here's how we can fix it. She was smart, talented, and generous. She was adjective, adjective, adjective. So instead of a good dancer, we could say she was talented, and that really opens up that paragraph. I could talk about lots of ways that this person shows talent. And generous, it helps me think of more than one anecdote to prove that she's generous. Okay, how about this one? This one's not done very well. Marty is the kindest person you'll ever meet. He is caring, a great baseball coach, and good to his wife. Take a second and see if you can tell why this is not parallel. Think about the parts of speech. Marty is the kindest person you'll ever meet. He is caring, adjective, a great baseball coach, noun, and good, adjective, to his wife. Let's see if we can fix it. How about this one? Marty is the kindest person you'll ever meet. He is a caring father, a great baseball coach, and a good husband. So adjective, noun, adjective, noun, adjective, noun. Note that I added good, changed good to his wife to another adjective, noun pair, to a good husband. That's the 3 and 3.5. So let's look at the 5. 5 total paragraphs. So when you think about that, at first it may seem like a lot to write about one subject or one film. It can be a little overwhelming. But if you think about the 3.5 paragraph essay and every essay you write, as each paragraph has a job to do and you assign the job before you try to write the next draft, it really is helpful. So let's look at this slide where I have an outline, a very basic outline of the jobs of each paragraph. Okay, in a 5-paragraph essay, the first paragraph, Roman numeral 1, is the introduction. That's going to be true for anything you write. The last sentence in a 3.5 paragraph essay of that introductory paragraph is the 3-part thesis statement. It has to go exactly there. Again, once you prove to me that you can write in this structure, for the next essay you can change it up any way you want to. Paragraphs 2, 3, and 4 develop the ideas from the thesis. So paragraph 2 develops the first idea from the thesis. So if you think to my Jessi thesis, the first thing she saves is time. Everything in that paragraph is about time, and so on. And then the last paragraph is the conclusion. Warning, warning, warning. Do not restate everything you've already said in the conclusion. We're going to talk about strategies for a sophisticated college-level conclusion. The introduction, or the hook paragraph. You've been told this your whole writing life. Make it interesting and eye-catching. Your teacher is bored with grading all these papers. You want to make her laugh. Bonus points if you make me laugh. Something funny or shocking or an interesting factoid. Those are all great ways to start your paragraph. I decided to begin mine with a gentle description of the very sophisticated, crazy sophisticated baby shower, and then throwing Jessi in there for the contrast at the end. The end of the introductory paragraph is going to be the thesis statement. Let's look back at the Jessi intro. This is all description until we get to the word but. But all the quiet chatter changes into a little scandalized gasp when my best friend Jessi walks into the room, her rainbow-colored leg warmers peeking out beneath her black lace skirt. Okay, so all of this is description until we get to that transition. She winks at me hard through her vintage cat-eye glasses, and I can't help but smile. I've underlined here the last sentence because it is what? The thesis statement. It is opinionated, and it's going to show us what the rest of the essay is about. So the next paragraph should be about what? How Jessi saves time. Okay, the first sentence of each of those middle body paragraphs has to serve as a topic sentence. In other words, it's like a tiny thesis by itself. In other formats, you can move that topic sentence around anywhere in the paragraph you want, but for the 3.5, it has to be that first sentence of the body paragraph, and you need transitions too. So let's look about paragraph 2, the time paragraph. In the first sentence, the word time should appear somewhere, or a very close synonym. And I've underlined it here. It is very close to the top of the paragraph in that first sentence. Okay, so see the huge amount of time they all must have spent agonizing over what to wear today. The rest of that paragraph, every sentence in there has to be supporting the idea that Jessi saved time. Every sentence helps to prove that time is something that she saves. In the next body paragraph, which is body paragraph 2, third paragraph of the essay, it's about money. So I have to have the word money or saved or a close synonym up to the very beginning of the paragraph. The guests do lean over to whisper about her. I also remark on how much most of these women must have spent on their appearance today. So every sentence in this paragraph is about saving money. If we look at the last sentence here, she saves money the rest of us literally throw away on nothing more than our vanity. That's the end. Everything is about money. In the next paragraph, I transition. But money isn't the only thing Jessi saves. Now that's my first sentence, and it's okay because it ties the last idea of the paragraph above into the first idea of this paragraph. But the rest of this paragraph is supposed to be about energy. My topic sentence has to contain the word energy or a close synonym because my thesis statement promised that this would be the third point I would make. So that third body paragraph, the fourth paragraph of the essay, is about saving energy. Everything here is about saving energy. Okay? Now, conclusions. Be certain that each sentence, body paragraph. Be certain that each sentence in each body paragraph is focused on proving that aspect of the thesis statement to be true. The conclusion. Okay, here's what you're not going to do. You are not going to restate, reword, or reiterate what you've already said. I promise I was listening. I promise I paid attention. I heard you the first time. This is what we do in speeches because the reader or the listener to a speech has to depend on what they've heard. They can't glance back up in the essay to see what you've already said. So for a speech, it's fine to reiterate what you've said. Other subject areas have their own rules and conventions. A history teacher might tell you that you absolutely do have to summarize and restate what you've said, but for English, no. For sophisticated real-world writing, no. So if you can't do that, what are you supposed to do in the last paragraph? You develop your ideas. You answer the question, so what? Think of the last paragraph as a call to action. So your reader has spent all this time reading your essay. What do you want them to go out and do? Or how do you want them to think of life differently now that you've convinced them that your idea is valid? So after I spent all that time convincing you that Jessi saves time, money, and energy, the bigger picture for you is that I want you to go out and do and see things differently. Be kinder to people like Jessi. Examine your own inability to be your own person. Are you the type of person that conforms and it just makes you miserable? I want you to question that. I want you to think about your own attitudes towards life and people like Jessi differently.